New York City is the number one city in the United States. The whole world knows that. It's the financial capital. It's in many ways, the cultural capital, and so on. But here's something you may not have known. As of May 20th this year, 2025, New York is the richest city by far in the United States. It counts among its residents 66 billionaires. Keep that in mind. 66 billionaires. No other city has anything like that. On top of that, 818 people who own $100 million or more. And then comes a number that really surprised me. How many millionaires are there in New York City? 384,500. 384,000 millionaires in one city. That's why it's the richest city. That kind of stupefying wealth can be, should be, a very lucrative tax basis for a city to not only be the place where the richest people congregate, but a showplace for what a country and a city could be. But it isn't. New York City also ranks as one of the 10 poorest cities in America, measured by the percentage of its people who live at or below the official poverty line. There is no reason for that, no need for that kind of inequality in our society. And I will come back to that in the second half of the program when I talk about all the things Mr. Mamdani can do, will likely do, some of them for sure, to address everything I've just described. Stay with us. In a moment, we'll see where the Mamdani administration, if he succeeds in November, will take us, or at least what the opportunities and options facing him will be. Thank you. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Before we jump into the second half of today's show, I wanted to thank you for your very generous response to our fundraising efforts this year, and in particular in the last couple of months. And in part responding to that, we are extending the availability of our limited edition, linen-covered, hardcover version of Understanding Capitalism, the book I wrote and that we have been making available now for quite a while. If you are interested, I will be signing copies of that hardcover, and they will be available to you as they have been over the last few weeks. Just simply send an email to us at info@democracyatwork.info and put in the subject line limited edition. We will send you all the information you need to order and receive your copy, signed copy, of Understanding Capitalism in its hardback. And thank you again for your kind attention to the fundraising dimension of what we do. Welcome back, friends, to the second half of Economic Update. We're talking about the Mamdani bombshell victory in the New York mayoral Democratic primary. In the first half, we talked about how to understand the context, where it comes from, what it's about. Now I want to talk about where it's going to take us. What is he going to do? What opportunities does he actually have? I want to begin by talking about what he means by socialism, because things are being said about him and the label socialist that are nonsense, and you should be clear about that in your mind. There was a grain of truth to that, but it isn't anymore. And that's perhaps the most important thing that I can tell you. And I'll say it as bluntly as I know how. The American empire is over. We're done. We peaked about 12, 15 years ago, and we are on a down. And it's very hard for the American people, which I understand. I am one. It's hard to get your head around that. We've had a century of on the way up, which is a lot more fun than on the way down. But it does happen to every empire. We're only the latest. Look at the British, how far they've fallen. We're in that process. So the problem with the trickle down is, yeah, there might be more jobs, but they're going to be created in China. They're going to be created in Brazil. They're going to be created in India. They're not created here.
How do you compare this moment of slashing, particularly in the federal government, to, say, the 90s when Bill Clinton did something somewhat similar?
Right.
Is this just a partisan disagreement, or are there substantive differences?
No. Again, and I know this is difficult for people to hear, this is a cut based on desperation. This is an economy that is indeed, we have the greatest level of corporate debt this country has ever seen, off the chart. The greatest level of personal debt, and we have the greatest level of government debt. Our government debt is now trillions of dollars greater than our annual output. That was not the case in the 20th century. It is the case now. What you're seeing is desperation politics. The whole Trump phenomena ought to say to you, wait a minute, these jerky moves that are out of whack, right? In recent days, we have seen the decision of the Trump administration to kiss the war in Ukraine goodbye. We're not doing that no more because we can't afford it. We can't keep funding a war, which, by the way, the West is losing, as anybody who pays attention knows. All of these things are signs of what? Of a country that is in trouble and is it turning on its friends because it can to save itself. We're going to take over, we're going to get your energy for nothing. We're going to, make you build the wall, Hugh, in Mexico. Look what the genius in a way of Mr. Trump is that without understanding it, because clearly he doesn't, he feels in his own way, the way lots of people do, that there's something that necessitates going way beyond what has been done because our need as a society is beginning to show up. Look, let me give you a simple example. The best electric vehicles in the world right now, by uniform global agreement, are produced by something called the BYD Corporation, which probably most folks have never heard of, which is Chinese. BYD, the initials, BYD. They make the best quality, cheapest electric car and truck. All right. You don't see them anywhere in the United States. Why not? Because Mr. Trump put a 27% tariff on them, and Mr. Biden raised it to 100%. So let me give you an example. Wow. If you wanted to buy a $30,000 BYD electric vehicle, which you could do, that's what they charge. That's why it's so good. You would have to pay $30,000 to get the Chinese to ship it here. Then you'd have to give another $30,000, 100%, tariff to Uncle Sam, or in this case, Uncle Don, in the way of a tariff. So it would cost you $60,000, which you're not going to do because you can get a less good Tesla or GM or Ford or anybody else at $40,000 to $50,000, which is less than you'd have to pay. But here's the problem.
I was going to say, because right now this sounds like a good plan to a lot of people. Trump has said, I'm going to do this not just to China, although he's going to double existing tariffs to China, obviously, right. But Mexico, Canada, everybody. If we intensify the tariffs, the scenario you just painted will happen, and people will be forced to buy U.S. stuff,
right?
Which then creates U.S. jobs, which again stimulates the economy.
All right, let me be the economist. Okay, that's good for the Tesla company, which I'm sure is purely coincidental, and GM and Ford and the others. Good. And they'll maybe be able to hold on to some jobs. Good. But now let's follow the bouncing ball, because that's my job as an economist.
Yeah.
Everywhere else in the world, every company in Asia, Africa, Latin America that competes with an American company that has to buy a truck as part of its business will go to China and buy the best truck at the lowest price, $30,000, the best truck. No American company that competes with them will do that. And you know what that means? Those companies will be able to charge a lower price because they have better inputs than the American company, which doesn't. In the long run, that will lose Americans' jobs left and right as they're outcompeted by all the rest of the world that can go and buy, and is buying, BYD trucks. If you go to Europe right now and you go on the auto routes all over Europe, you'll see BYD cars and trucks. If you take the United States together with the other G7 countries, that used to be the dominant bloc of the world, right? The United States, let's just enumerate them so everybody knows. Canada, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, and Britain, okay? The G7, and I'm going to add up all the GDP, gross domestic product, total output of goods and services of all of those 7 countries, U.S. and its major allies. And now I'm going to compare it to the gross added up GDPs of China and its allies, known now as the BRICS. Okay, you add up the United States, about 28% of world output. You add up China and the BRICS, it's 35% of the world output. We aren't the wealthiest bloc in the world. We're number 2. And that's new. And that changes everything. Every country in Asia, Africa, Latin America, trying to figure out who to go to borrow money from, who to go to cut a deal with, who to go to sell your exports, who to go to invest in your railroads. You know where they used to go? Washington, London, Paris, of course. Now they go there.
But they go to India and Brazil.
That's right. They go to Sao Paulo, New Delhi, Beijing, and they ask, can you give us a better deal? And here's the news I got to give you. They get the better deals, and they go that way. And that's not going to stop. And you can rattle your sabers all over the board. You put the 7th Fleet in the South China Sea, isn't going to change that. You've got to come to terms with that, but we are led by people who don't want to do that because nobody wants to be the politician who has to explain to the people it's over. And we now have to figure out, which we should do and we could do, and we have still lots of resources to manage coming to terms with the changed situation.
And a kind of economic insularity doesn't do that. It's saying, hey, we may not do so well in the global market anymore, but if these companies, these U.S. companies, are sort of treated properly and the tariffs keep the other people out, we can, just based on the few 100 million people in this country, be able to support our economy, create jobs, and live steadily.
I doubt it. Possible, but I doubt it.
Why?
Because it's never worked that way. We have a global economy. We're more globalized than we ever were. We have language now. Supply chain. Almost every American kind of understands what's a supply chain. Didn't used to think about things like that because we were all here. When they say supply chain, they kind of know that when you get up in the morning and you have your breakfast, the coffee doesn't come from America and the sugar in it doesn't come from America. So if you put a lot of tariff, your latte is going to cost you $30. Uh-oh. How are you going to manage this in a country already troubled with inequality? The price increases alone, suggested by what he's doing, the dramatic actions, they look dramatic. I'm helping America. It looks wonderful. I mean, it's choreographed in Hollywood, but it doesn't work. Shame on those media, because what they're doing is erasing part of the actual history of the United States and of New York City. Socialism is not new to American politics, not at all. I'm going to give you 3 examples of major socialists who won important elections in New York City. And if you did not know these names, look them up, and you'll learn about American history, what you should have been taught in school. The first name is Vito Marcantonio, an Italian-American who won 7 consecutive terms in the United States Congress as a representative from Harlem. during the years 1935 to 1950. That's not the time of the dinosaurs. That's not ancient history. That's recent history. He won over and over again and did not run away or hide his socialist associations and sympathies. My next example, Benjamin Davis. Benjamin Davis won and won repeatedly a seat on the New York City Council between 1944 and 1949. Mr. Davis had a double distinction that might surprise you that he was an elected official way back then. He was an active member and leader of the Communist Party in the United States, and in particular of its New York chapter. He was also an African American, a black communist, won repeated elections on that kind of a socialist communist program that was very popular, obviously. And the third one is perhaps a name you do know, because he was the mayor of New York, another Italian-American, Fiorello LaGuardia, after whom the airport is named. He was in the Republican Party and loved to tell people how he was a socialist in that party. He won office as a representative in Congress, and then he was the New York City mayor from 1934 to 1946. Across the Great Depression, this man, a socialist, was elected and re-elected mayor of the city of New York. So Zoran Mamdani is not the first, not the only, and all the hullabaloo about it should be taken down 2 or 3 pegs by just this little bit of history. Now, how did he win? He won because all the different ethnic groups in New York got together and supported him in huge numbers. Young people particularly. People who haven't voted, young and old, because they didn't think there was enough of a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats to matter all that much, or among the different Democrats who contested in primaries. He gave them something new and different to vote for that they hadn't seen for decades. Ever since World War II brought to an end the careers of the Marcantonios and the LaGuardias and the Davises, it's been center to the right politics, and that would turn off millions as it did. Zoran Mamdani has turned them back on. Then there's the appeal of his socialism. He wants free subways and buses. He wants to have city-run grocery stores in areas that we now call food deserts, where it's hard to find food to buy in a nearby store, or it's wildly expensive. That's not necessary. That's something the city can deal with. He wants to bring back a robust rent control, like we once had in New York. Okay, one kind of socialism actually is called municipal socialism. It's a particular socialism that focuses on this question. What could a person do who was elected a socialist mayor of a city or town if the larger economy remains capitalist, but people have voted for a socialist in that town? First, let me show you how important this is. Back in 1911, that's 100 years ago, not ancient history, the number of American cities whose mayors were socialists, 73 cities. I particularly have done research on 2 of them. The city of Bridgeport in Connecticut, that's the 3rd largest city in Connecticut, had a socialist mayor. And the city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin had a socialist mayor, more than one. So this is not, again, new, and they tried all kinds of things. And I'm going to talk to you in a moment about some of the things they tried that Mr. Mamdani can do here. In the United Kingdom, a country similar to ours, there's a much more developed municipal socialism. And the basis of the Labor Party used to be the labor unions on the one hand and the socialist cities who did a lot of things for themselves. They produced their own energy. They produced their own food. They produced their own local transport and things like that as a collective community project, not a private profit enterprise. And that was the political base of Jeremy Corbyn, the most dramatic leader the British Labour Party has had in decades, the one preceding the current dud, Mr. Starmer. Okay, let's turn then. What could Mr. Mamdani do? I'm going to start, and this is a list of mine, not a list of his. He will do some of the things I suspect that I'm about to tell you about. I'm sure he'll figure others that I have not the time or the knowledge to give to you now. But it'll give you a good idea, and if it provides something for Mr. Mamdani and his administration, so much the better. We already have in New York City rent control. That's when socialists earlier in New York's history wanted to put a limit on how much landlords could gouge out of tenants through high rents. We know that rents are at record high levels. That's partly because rent control was limited and broken and stopped. Rent stabilization, which is a weaker kind of control, was substituted, and it is very limited. We could use, and we desperately need, a reinforced rent control operation. Don't need new legislation, it already exists. Don't need a new idea, it's already here. Just take it further, be more aggressive. And the basis for it is called democracy. The number of tenants is huge, and the number of landlords is very small. If we lower the rents, it helps the majority, and it will hurt the minority. But if you look at large numbers of our landlord class, you will see that they are among the richest in our community. They can take it, and the tenants need it, and the city will be revitalized if it stops being merely a playground for the rich. That's an easy one. Here's one that's a little more creative. The city could begin what it did after World War II, become a builder of low-rent, high-quality public housing. And where might it do that? I have two suggestions. If you look across the city of New York, you will be astonished to learn what I recently learned, that we have an enormous number of very minimally used golf courses. Yeah, huge expanses of land for the playing of golf. The number of people who play golf, all due respect to them, is very, very small. The housing problem is immense. How about condensing the many golf courses we have into one per borough? What about converting the others half into housing, half into the beautiful parks that we need more of in this city? Imagine a city administration taking the initiative to do that for the people. And here's a second one. What about buildings that are sitting empty, often for years, while the city wrangles in the courts to get the deadbeat owners of these buildings to pay the back taxes they owe? Why not short-circuit all of this and make it crystal clear we're not going to have people waiting for apartments when we have buildings that the city could seize, should seize, use eminent domain, the law that provides for this sort of thing. Get it done, rehabilitate the apartments, and provide them lottery basis to do it to people who need housing. Come on, Mr. Mamdani could become a hero for tens of thousands of New Yorkers who could benefit from such a program. Con Edison provides the energy that we rely on. We who heat our homes with electricity, as many of us do. We who use electricity for all of the modern life conveniences that require it. Every business uses electricity. Well, let me tell you something you may not have known. Con Edison charges 33.51 cents per kilowatt hour. 33 plus cents an hour. Keep that number in your head. What is the national average cost of electricity delivered, kilowatt per kilowatt hour? Here we go. 16.15 cents. The national average is half of what we all pay. And make no mistake, in your rent is the cost of electricity. When you go into a restaurant and have a hamburger, part of the price you pay is the electricity used up in holding that fridge to go and the stove to work and all the rest. Why are we doing this? Thousands of communities across America now produce their own electricity or buy it wholesale from a commercial and then redistribute it to the city at cost, bringing down the national average so it's less than half of what Con Ed. Mr. Mamdani should address that question. Free mass transit, he's talked about that. There are many cities around the world that have tried and worked with, some very successfully, to make public transportation free. Municipal daycare programs. All the people who need quality, safe, secure daycare for their kids. Elder care for the older folks. Summer camps for young children, and for older children, work camps where the children get paid to boot. How about a $2,000 rebate to every city resident for tuition paid either at a CUNY college or a CUNY community school? And where will the money come from to pay for these things? Well, I told you, let's tax the rich finally. And at what rate? At the rate we used to tax them. Nothing new, nothing all that. Revolutionary. Don't be fooled by scare stories. The income tax in New York City goes from 3 to 4%, depending on how rich you are. And it stops at $50,000 a year. Everybody who earns over $50,000 pays 4%. Why between 3 and 4? Why not 3 to 10? Why not 3 to 15? What's going on here? These are favors to the rich. Property tax works like that too. And there are many other ways. A city as rich as what I told you at the beginning can pay. And for the rich, it's nothing. If you're a millionaire, a 1% tax takes away from you next to nothing. You'll make more than that in a year in your stocks. And you can deduct it against your federal income tax. It's little to them. It can transform the city because there's so many of them. Last point. Scare the people by saying, oh, if you tax the rich, they'll leave. No, they won't. There is no other New York City to go to. They're not going to give up what they came here for. And the companies that threaten to go, here's your answer to them. If you go, I'm the mayor. I will make sure the people of this city know that you did that you abandoned the city rather than pay your fair share in taxes. You think that's going to do a lot of good to the people buying your product that now comes from outside? It won't. And here's one better. After you leave, we will seize your factory and we will convert it into a worker co-op. The jobs will keep. You, we will wave goodbye to. I want to take another example, and that is electric vehicles. It is now pretty well known, although not here in the United States, that the best and the cheapest electric car and truck on the market, at least now, is the BYD car and truck coming from China. And it had a tariff, I think Mr. Trump put it on around 27%, and then Mr. Biden raised it to 100%. And so currently, if you want to get a BYD electric vehicle, you have to pay, for example, $30,000 that goes to China to pay for the vehicle, and then another $30,000, 100%, tariff tax goes to Uncle Sam. So that if you want to buy it here, it would cost you $60,000, and that you're not going to do that in most cases. You're going to settle for an inferior car, electric car or truck. You're going to pay $45,000 to $55,000 to General Motors or Tesla or Ford or someone, Toyota, and you're going to end up with having spent more than the $30,000 it costs to get the vehicle and getting a poorer quality vehicle. Now, keep this in mind as I explain what you know, which is every American company that competes in the world economy and buys as an input either electric vehicle cars or electric trucks, every one of those competitors around the world is going to have an advantage over the American because of the tariff. The Americans cannot access $30,000 BYD trucks. The tariff precludes them. They have to pay $60,000 or do without the truck. And that means their competitor, whether that competitor is in China or Europe or Asia or Africa, is going to be able to outcompete the American. And the more goods are tariffed and that fall into that situation, the more you're going to lose jobs here. When he says, I'm going to protect the workers here by not letting BYD in, that's correct. He's going to protect some workers, but he's going to be doing it at the price of the jobs of other workers in the competitive story I've just told. This is not rocket science, and it means that the danger here is not only that he won't succeed, but he'll do damage that will take a long time to correct. Every government in the world, I don't think there's a single exception, where they have, which almost every government does, domestic economic difficulties of one kind or another, with their exports, with their imports, with their financial situation, with their unemployment. Every leader will now be able to say to his or her own people, yes, we are having difficulty, blame the Americans. Because what the Americans are doing is making things more difficult for everybody. And so there's enough plausibility, it'll be an exaggeration, but it'll be an exaggeration based on something that is real, that is in the newspapers all the time, that they know about, hear about. And what you're therefore doing is, it's not that you're not doing so-called soft power, the way they used to call this. You are undoing half a century of soft power. You are transforming the United States from the interesting place where you can buy, jeans or clothing or movies or all the elements of ideological transformation are now being put in reverse. The United States is becoming a villain. The stories of treating the immigrants the way they are, or for that matter, people who aren't immigrants have to worry when they arrive at an American airport, what will happen to them. All of this is a process in which you are undoing the position of the United States. And that's going to hurt American exports in a major way. It's going to have all kinds of consequences. Scientists leaving one part of the world and moving their careers to another. I could go on. We're seeing it already starting. And this is this is so stark that it makes me wonder that the level of anxiety about the conditions here in the United States among the people at the top may be much more advanced than we know, because they work very hard not to have us see what the problem is. And so even we are taken in with our critical approach not to see just how bad this situation. Otherwise, why would they do this? Well, my reaction is quite similar to that of most of the things that Mr. Trump's government is now doing. I see it as primarily designed for the political success he hopes it will have domestically here in the United States. His position as president is shakier now than it has been since he took the oath of office half a year ago. His polling numbers reflect that. The desperation with which he is casting about for almost anything that can distract the public from the issues that are driving down his popularity. And those issues are inflation, which, while it is still not serious, is ongoing and looking like it will speed up in the second half of the year, which is very, very bad news for him. The fact that he didn't bring, as he had promised, the war in Ukraine to an end, and on the contrary, it seems to be getting worse, that he's initiated a whole new war in Iran, that he has done nothing to stop the horrors of Gaza and the Middle East. And now he's caught up in a scandal in which the promised transparency of his government is clearly upended by the fact that they're trying to hide everything having to do with the pedophile financier, Jeffrey Epstein. So he is in very bad trouble, and he is casting about for almost anything that can look at least a little positive, or at least a little moving in the direction he had promised. To give you one final example, over the last 2 days, he has effectively and literally accused President Obama of treason, which is a crime punishable by death in the United States. It is very extraordinary, to say the least, for a president. I'm not sure it's ever happened in American history, for a president to suggest, let alone to declare, a prior president, especially one still living, to have committed a treasonous crime. You only would do that if you're desperate to distract. So the deal with Japan, announced a few hours ago, which looks good, is another effort to suggest, well, I'm at least succeeding somewhere over here in getting countries to submit to tariffs that are higher than what they used to have, higher than what people thought they ever would agree to. And here it is, I can claim that I agreed to it. I think that's the way to understand this. I'm not clear why the Japanese went along with it, except, of course, their government has its own crisis to deal with now. And a final point, it is not uncommon in international dealings for there to be not only the signing of official documents, but also the signing of secret documents that are not made public for a long time. I think it would be wise for everyone to keep in reserve at least the question, were other things done or given to Japan in this case to help it make a decision to sign the official agreement to a tariff as high as they agreed to? I'll say a few words about it in a moment. In the short run, and I think that's what's going on, in the short run, he's desperate for political points, and you're getting behavior that goes with that. He's looking for whatever agreement he can get, whether it's with Japan or the Philippines or Vietnam or whatever it is, that can make it look like he's getting what he was out there for, can stoke up his image as a powerful leader who can bully the rest of the world to go on. But let's take a look at what underlies the bullying, because that's the longer run. And the longer run is, I think the way to look at this is as follows. The United States has serious economic difficulties, and it is an empire in decline. And those two things end up meaning that this empire, to slow its own decline, is willing to sacrifice the relationships it had with many, many other countries. And it is willing to do that in a stark and kind of unforgiving way that is teaching all of those countries, friendly, neutral, hostile, teaching them a lesson they have to acknowledge. And the same is true for other corporations, companies, capitalists in all these different countries. You can't do business with the United States the way you once thought you could. The tariff shows you that. The insistence on a tariff shows you that. The threat, which has been articulated by Mr. Trump repeatedly, that if you're a country that retaliates to the tariff imposed or the tariff increase imposed by the United States, well, then we will hit you again by raising the tariff in a kind of escalating procedure. We are going to hurt you economically if we can. Yes, it's American companies importing all this stuff that have to pay the tax. But we all know, if we do a little bit of economics, that those companies that face a rising cost because they have to give Uncle Sam a tariff for everything they bring in, they will do everything in their power to reduce, shift, get rid of this extra cost, just like they would with every other cost that they encounter and that they've always done. So here's the things they will do. They will push it forward, charge the final consumer a higher price. That's one way to relieve the burden on you. And the other one is to go back to the source country from whom you buy and try to get them to give you a lower price so that they absorb the tariff. But Mr. Trump's problem is, either way, however each company does it, he will lose. He will get hostility from the rest of the world, and he will get a loss of support from his own consumer public base. He's caught. This is not a solution except in the posture of what he's doing, because if you've noticed, he likes to talk about tariffs as if the victim of them was unilaterally, obviously, and totally the country of origin, which is not only bad economics, but is, in the short run, even in the short run, a very short-term advantage until people pay the higher prices, or the hostility of other countries shows up in the fact that they cut the United States out of their growth plans. And I know that that is happening from companies I'm associated with. That's already underway in many other parts of the world. And here's a footnote. The graph you showed us at the beginning It's really unspeakable. The worst economy in Europe right now, by many measures, is the United Kingdom. For them to be accumulating dollar holdings when they are in desperate need of using those dollars to develop their own economy out of the hole into which it has